So, hey guys, today we're going to be talking about the Scythe, which is Artifact. So that is to say, Artifact Scythe. So, Artifact Scythe was recently banned, but this just makes me sad in a certain kind of way. So, Artifact Scythe, of course, is a very powerful card, but is it always a very powerful card? Because Artifact Scythe can simultaneously be immediately game winning or a card that does absolutely nothing, actually. And I'm not just talking about your opponent having, of course, a Called by the Grave or a Bistral, which, that does deal with Artifact Scythe pretty cleanly. So, Artifact Scythe says specifically that your opponent cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of this turn, meaning you can still at least special summon. So, this really hurts in the sense that, we just don't really have any really main deck focused strategies anymore. In terms of like the main deck focused strategies that we've recently had, we have had very few. So we have, of course, like Vanquish Soul with like normal summon Rosin, tag outs and whatnot. That is like okay. Like it's not even that great because you still prefer no Scythe. And yeah, I mean Scythe just still hurts this. Then we have maybe something like a Therion where your main deck monsters are pretty powerful, I guess. And they're also pretty large and in charge guys, fellas, whatever. So, yeah, that's another strategy. And then we have some kind of ritual strategies. The only one that I can think of that doesn't actually access the extra deck is, well, need to access the extra deck for their combo, like Drytron needs to make that XYZ monster. Ventred, for example, would need to make the Link 2 for their combos. We have, well, actually, Ventred doesn't need to as much as Drytron does. But yeah, we have Low and Skull Guardian here, which you can summon under like the effect of a Scythe. But even if you did summon these guys, I think, well, you're not that happy about being under Scythe Lock, I guess. But there's also the fact that your strategy well, it does involve going into the extra deck still because we need to go into rock here, and there's sometimes I need to. Well, I guess in voiceless that's the probably the only one that I can think of that doesn't really need to go into the extra deck. That isn't just like a back row deck. Speaking of which, try Scythe Locking Lab and see how that goes. I'm really sure that that'll really get you far. Hmm. That doesn't even stop, for example, Nadir Servant, sending Entis, searching, special summon Fleur de Lis. Anyway, that doesn't really work out that well for you here. So then with Therions, I can special summon some Therion guys, but there's only one Therion with any removal on your own turn, and that's going to be the Blind. Otherwise, I guess you can do some battle destruction via battle. I mean, they're big guys at least, so could work, I suppose. But seeing Scythe ban makes it very clear, at least to me, to an extent. I mean, I guess they're really not intending to make any strategies where your boss monsters will be in your main deck aside from the extra deck. Like rituals are terrible basically because they're like extra deck monsters you have to put in your main deck and you can brick on them. And that doesn't even, of course, talk about how you have ritual spells that you have to play that you can also brick on. Just uh, we're not talking about like voiceless voice or voiceless voice specifically, just like ritual decks in general. That's kind of how they work, right? In terms of decks where we have like just our main deck guys being most of our interruptions, like I kind of wish we still had something like that. I guess like Dira is another deck that's kind of like that, but there's also issues with cash. Just like I don't even feel like talking about that right now, but Dira is somewhat RNG and needs like multiple turns to consistently be able to do things for the most part. without an extra deck, so it's like meh. It's I guess. And then I guess there's also technically something like a Flandries, which doesn't access the extra deck because you're locked out of it anyway, so nothing's really changed here. But just seeing some sort of deck where you're able to play under Scythe, I think, would just be interesting. So part of the issue with some floodgates, it's not like all floodgates, but it's a lot of floodgates, honestly, is that, well, there's just no way to really do anything about them because you're just playing a deck that happens to lose to a floodgate, or you're just perfectly fine under this floodgate because it does nothing to you. So, for example, let's try Rivalry of Warlords versus Ryzeal. That'll do something, right? I'm not 100% sure how much this does, but it does something for sure. And then versus yugioh, where they can go into Chaos Angel. And I'm not really sure if Arudris is a fiend, but if it's a fiend, they can go into that also, Might as well check. Now this is a wire. Okay, we're still solid in that regard. But yeah, it does very little to yugioh either way. So yeah, not really cooking much. And then, for example, there can be only one. This would do basically, well, let's just go find it. Okay. This would do basically nothing to like a Therion deck or a Vanquish Soul deck, and we're talking in terms of just pure right now. But yeah, Peekaboo, nothing here. They're all different types. These guys are also all different types. Rivalry affects like Cash a little bit, still playable under the Floodgate. And then there are other decks like, that can't do anything at all. So, for example, you're under like a macro type effect. Oh, look, my Therion cards are all literally useless and I can't do anything ever. And then we have Vanquish Soul, where it's like, you know what? I don't like macro that much, but I'm still chilling. I can still play. So, yeah, just they don't have to be like amazing decks necessarily, but I think like just having decks that are able to play under certain things and in certain situations is just going to be a lot more interesting. So even if you do get floodgated, it's not like, so the floodgate will still be useful for your opponent, but it won't be immediately game winning for them either, and it will still inhibit your plays. I think that's probably one of the most healthy kind of game states with a floodgate in it, I suppose, right? So these ones, honestly, I think kind of RNG, right? Like stuff like Rivalry, Peekaboo goes in. For the most part, those are RNG. Like if you even see Rivalry or whatever, or if the matchup allows for, I guess, your deck to just function under these situations, right? But when it comes to like a macro or Scythe, these cards are a lot more generically accessible, or these types of effects. And just for example, we'll go Seal, specifically the Hieratic Seal of Heavenly Spheres. And then we'll be able to special summon any dragon. And you know who's any dragon? Hammerphage Sloth. You cannot special summon from the extra deck except for Hammerphage monsters. Guess what? There are no Hammerphage extra deck monsters anyways, so you can only pen summon Hammerphage monsters. That's the best you can do under a lock with Hammerphage Sloth. Great. So even banning Scythe doesn't like fully fix this to an extent, And then for macro, you have Dark Law and Arise Heart, and I think there were a few others like, I don't know, Banisher of the Light, Banisher of the Radiance. Those options will also just put you under macro, and then maybe your deck just completely can't play. Like you can't even special summon a guy anymore, like with Snake Eye, or like Fiendsmith. Those decks just don't work under macro. Like a lot of decks just don't work under macro at all, to the point where you have absolutely no plays and can't do anything at all. So maybe instead we had just like just a really bad play or kind of just mid play that doesn't really do much, I think that would just be a lot better instead of just straight outright dying to macro or like a Scythe. Just having something you can do would be nice, I guess. Like let's see what Ryziel can actually accomplish under Scythe block. All right, let's see. We can normal summon one of our Ryziel cards for sure. We can also special summon any of them. That does this do anything? We can put a bunch of Ryziels onto our field. Plasma Hole actually does have this effect, where if we're under Scythe, we could technically XYZ do Detonator on the next turn, maybe. Except we have no way to put Plasma Hole into the graveyard, so... No, not really useful, per se. Anything else? Does it send a card? Well, it does, like a monster, not like a Ryziel card. And none of these send at all. And then this is not activatable because this is based on Ryziel XYZ monsters, which you can't make because of Scythe type block. I guess Scythe is exceptionally like terrible to deal with because it's a lingering floodgate effect. But still, even if it lingers, if you're able to play under the effect, it is not nearly as bad like with Shifter, right? But also there's like nothing that plays super well under Shifter. So in terms of like just cards and archetypes and how they play under Shifter, the only deck that benefits directly off of the Shifter, I believe, is going to be Kishtira. And that's it. Yep. So for Luandries, you lose an interaction with the trap because if the trap gets sent to the graveyard instead, it becomes a Book of Eclipse. With Exo Sister, it's just neutral, that there's no benefit but no detriment. Kishtira would allow you to activate Prep and banish your Kishtira spells and traps, which then are able to trigger when they are banished. So a little bit better for them in particular. With Ryziel, in comparison, under macro, you have a bit of just some plays. You have normal summon Ice, and then Ice can special summon a monster, or you can normal summon any Ryziel, special summon Sword. Those are your two real options, I guess, with Ryziel. So you at least have something, unlike Snake Eye, which, let's go ahead and take a look at what Snake Eye does if you get shifted. I can normal summon Snake Eye Ash, special summon Poplar, and then... I mean, at best, no one's playing this card, right? We'd be able to add Startling Stare of the Snake Eyes fast, but since no one is playing this, then... what are we doing from here? Add Original Sinful for next turn? We can link these guys off for, like, an SP. Yeah, I'm really sure that'll be useful. Uh-huh. And that's not accounting for, your opponent having actual interruptions and an end board. Because, the Ryziel play of, like, normal summon guy, special summon guy, make rank 4 isn't really that great, per se. So, yeah. I am basically thinking just floodgates. I think it'd be fine in general. It's situational how good a floodgate is. But, when you start stacking floodgates, that's when it gets, like, insanely oppressive. So, just for example, okay, so you're under Macrocosmos, okay? But now you're under Deck Lockdown, which is essentially also a superior version of Colossus, preventing also special summoning from the deck. And also you can't add cards because, it is still Colossus effect. And you know what? While we're at it, we'll slap Scythe block on top of that too, so not only are you under macro, you're unable to search cards, you're unable to special summon from the deck, you're also unable to special summon from the extra deck, or you know what? we could just remove your ability to special summon altogether and then remove your ability to activate spells. Or we could just spend your ability to activate spells or traps and set spells or traps. Which is like all of these things are actually somewhat reasonable to do in this game. It's not actually that difficult to set up. Speaking of which, just like setting up a Colossus in Cache is actually like super easy, like way easier than it should be. But we have uh not Nemesis. Yeah, there we go. Nemesis Corridor here. So if we banish with Rise Heart, we can special summon Corridor, and then we can just summon a Colossus. So yeah, special summon Colossus. If we just have Corridor in hand with any any Rise Heart combo, essentially, that would allow us to go into Nemesis Corridor. So it's Colossus plus a Rise Heart pass. So it's macro plus Droll or Shifter Droll. And you have one interruption to play through, technically, in this case, I guess. But I mean, you're also under macro Droll. And a lot of decks just will have absolutely nothing they can do. In which case, if you're playing Malice, exactly, that's like probably the only deck that can play under these situations. Well, this situation, I suppose, where you cannot search and all your cards get banished. And play is just like an interesting word here because your plays are still pretty limited here and you are still affected by the macro, but it's better than being unable to do anything at all. Like, example with mayhaps like Carrion, Vanquish Soul, you're not really doing anything under these conditions for the most part, unless with Vanquish Soul you'd have to open like the exact best hand your deck can produce, requiring you to have like Rosin and then all of the attributes required to activate probably a Caesar, I guess. And then in that case, you would be able to out exactly just the Riser. You still wouldn't be able to out the Colossus actually. Not on the same turn anyways. Which is pretty disgusting. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.